Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back with another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. It is Wednesday, September 30th. We are talking about last night's so-called debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And joining me is my Calbuzz partner and wizened political analyst, Phil Trounstine. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing okay, partner.
So I read something interesting on the Bulwark this morning. I just want to read you this real quick quote. It's by Richard North Patterson. He says, one aftermath of Donald Trump's frightening and aberrant debate performance was that his nakedly unshackled sociopathy virtually obliterated conventional political analysis. And I think there's some truth to that. I mean, we can talk about, who had the best line or did Biden win, but the takeaway was that Trump was just a complete disruption mode, yelling, interrupting, and basically taking the whole debate down into the mud.
And I totally agree, and I agree with Patterson. It really does defy conventional political analysis. It made me think about what you and I had looked at 5 years ago.
August 31st, 2015. I looked it up.
Where we matched up Donald Trump's personality with the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual's definition of narcissism. And what we saw, I think before anybody else in the media pointed it out, was that he has all the characteristics of a narcissist. And then somebody came along later and sort of put the label on it, a malignant narcissist.
Yeah, that George Conway, Kellyanne Conway.
Yeah, and maybe it's worth talking about just a little bit, because if you look at it the landscape of a debate is very psychologically dangerous to a narcissist, because in a debate, one guy says one thing, another guy critiques him. He says something negative about him. He says that's not right here. And the problem with a narcissist is he cannot be criticized. And so from the standpoint of Donald Trump looking at a debate against one other person, unchecked, his instinct is to just blow it up, to overtalk, interrupt, and destroy the actual concept of the debate itself. And I think that's exactly what he did.
All right, well, let's set aside the notion for a minute that 60 million Americans support a sociopath and just talk about it in political terms. Because the spin coming out of Trump world now as well, it was a strategy for him to try to throw a Biden off kilter, to either get Biden, to blow up, or to, make Biden melt down into a puddle of tears. And he just took it too far. So I guess, that's the most innocent construction that you could put on what he did. I am inclined, based on other things he said, to see it of a piece of his effort to totally delegitimize the election. He knows he's looking, right. He's a cornered rat, and he's going to bring us all down with him.
I think that's right. And he did, in response to a Chris Wallace question, he did say he's going to rely on the United States Supreme Court with his sixth vote to, quote, look at the ballots. And I think what he means by that, I think that is fairly obvious. He expects that he can immediately declare that he's won, and then try to stop the vote, have Bill Barr go in, try to stop the vote count, as George Bush did in Florida. And then if he has to, rely on the United States Supreme Court to declare that he's the winner. That's, I think in his mind, that's the strategy. Don't you think so?
No, I agree. I think he did more than, step over a line on norms. He really did try to destroy that debate. And I think it signals what his approach is going to be to the election. Because remember, there's 77 days or something between the election and the inauguration in which he has time to do mischief. I mean, the other piece that was frankly frightening when he said this is not going to end well.
Right.
And that was in the context of, urging his supporters to go be poll watchers. In other words, to intimidate people, particularly when it's coupled with that whole interchange about the Proud Boys and the fact that he would not just come out and denounce white supremacy.
Well, and I think that if we take let's look back 30 years from now, what the history books will remember in particular about that debate, it's Trump's call to arms to his white supremacist supporters to stand back and stand by, which they immediately made into a slogan, which was basically an attempt to say, wasn't an attempt, it was a call to arms to those people. You're up. And Antifa, we have to do something about Antifa. Now, today on the lawn before he got on the helicopter, he said, "Stand down. You leave everything to law enforcement." But again, given the opportunity to just flat out denounce white supremacist support, he refuses to do it. He simply won't do it.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because Tim Scott, the black Republican senator from South Carolina, who's been very loyal to Trump and has what has to be the most painful situation of all, said this morning, I think he misspoke. And if he misspoke, he should say that he misspoke. So I didn't see Trump on the lawn, but it sounds like perhaps he was responding to that. And I have to say, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think when we say, stand by, stand back, stand by, we're ascribing a level of linguistic precision to Trump that he does not usually possess. You know what I mean? I don't think those were words that were in his head a priori. They just come
No,
up.
but I think if the words had popped into his head, he would have said on guard. He would have said, stand ready. Those are just, the Proud Boys got what he meant. They understood it to mean, in fact, one of them explicitly said in one of his tweets, he said, he gave us permission to fuck them up.
Yeah.
So they understood what he was saying. Now, whether it was Tim Scott or whether he maybe wanted to try to take some of the energy out of the charge, he turned it to stand down today.
Which will be the headline now. Trump softens, whatever, once
But
again.
he didn't misspeak. What he did was, who was it who once said, Michael, what's his name, said, a gaffe.
Kingsley.
Kingsley said,
When someone in Washington accidentally tells the truth.
Accidentally says something that's true.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's face it.
Let me ask you this. Did Trump get any votes out of that debate? Did Biden get any votes out of that debate?
No, I don't think so. And it's frankly, again, in conventional political terms, it's less of a problem for Biden. I mean, Biden, quote unquote, won the debate by any conventional measure because he's winning and nothing happened that's going to, hit into his lead. Trump is in a position of needing to build a coalition,
right,
needing to attract more voters, specifically white suburban women voters.
Right.
And
he scared the hell out of them.
I can imagine he did. And a couple of the stations had groups of undecided voters. and the big headline of that one was the woman, I think she was from Wisconsin, who said, he sounded like he was on crack. So
yeah, that was a Frank Luntz
yes,
focus group. And Frank Luntz, for our viewers, our readers, Frank Luntz is an extremely right-wing pollster and focus group guy who the last thing he would do is set up a situation where somebody from one of his focus groups says the president of the United States, a Republican, sounded like he was on crack.
although Frank may be like Matt Drudge and kind of have his finger in the wind here about which way he still needs to work in this town. Again, on a conventional measure, I think if all the disruption, absent that, the takeaway line of the night would have been, Biden's critique on the pandemic of Trump, saying it is what it is about all the 200,000.
It is what it is because you are who you are.
Right.
And that was a well-prepared line.
Right, but it was completely lost in the Sturm und Drang of the moment. But it was,
right.
And it does go both to the pandemic, which is the central critique of the Biden campaign, about the unfitness, as well as the personality piece of it. But in answer to your question, no, I don't see how he attracted any voters. I imagine it thrilled his base that he was behaving like a jerk. But I don't see. Do you see?
I don't see. Again, I'll just, like you said, the situation is Biden's got a 7 to 10 point lead, anywhere from 4 to 10 points in key states, maybe 4 in Pennsylvania, up to 10 in Wisconsin. According to good polling that's being done this year, that's taking into account the education level of white male voters and a lesson they learned from 2016 polling. And so if Biden's ahead in all the key places, then Trump's got to win votes. He's got to get all the independents, and he's got to get all the undecideds, rather, and some of the people that are already in Biden's camp. He's got to get them over on his side in order to get a majority in those states. Well, as far as I can tell, all he did was scare the hell out of precisely the kinds of voters he needs to get. Whereas Biden came across, he wasn't perfect. He wasn't, but he was sharp. He had his points down, and he withstood a firestorm that a lot of women will identify with the sort of the crazed, raging,
abusive,
for them,
emotionally abusive.
Abusive. I thought Nicole Wallace, her first response was to say that was an exercise in abuse, that Trump abused Biden and he abused Chris Wallace.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a lot of women that are going to look at that, just like the woman from Frank Luntz's focus group, who say, "Boy, that is some dangerous shit. We don't want to have anything to do with that anymore."
Of course,
so in that sense, the debate was a success because it revealed who Donald Trump is.
Right. But then you could look at the other side of it too. And I don't know, I put something up yesterday. I think, 86% of the people who said they were going to watch the debate said it wouldn't make any difference what happened. They wouldn't change their mind. So we're talking about very small. So the question is, does that depress turnout, which it seems to me is in Trump's favor? And was that another thing he was trying to do?
I think that's possible. I think maybe that was part of his strategic goal, was make it so ugly, so unpleasant, that he actually makes people throw up their hands and say, I am not going to have anything to do with this, which serves his purpose. Because if those people don't show up, and I thought Biden caught on to that. Biden caught on that. He looked straight at the camera and said, almost like Uncle Sam,
you better go. Yeah, no, that was smart. And obviously that was the strategy that they had prepared for. Trump was going to act like a madman. And so he would turn straight to the camera and talk to people, which I thought he did very effectively about the pandemic when he said, is there an empty chair? Were you unable to say, goodbye to your parents or
Right.
stuff like that? It was very humanizing and, plays to obviously his big strength, which is empathy. But again, I wonder if anybody heard it. So if you are Senator Cory Gardner or Senator Susan Collins or even Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican senator who's in a race that's, you're either behind or
48, yeah.
Are you feeling good today about the way the president performed?
Boy, I don't think so. I think you have, you don't see them out there jumping up and down talking about what a great job President Trump did. They're all pretty quiet about the whole thing. I saw a Quinnipiac poll this morning that said that Jamie Harrison and Lindsey Graham are tied at 48%. That's not good for the sitting senator.
Well, and we talked about it last time that, in this question of who won and who didn't win on election night, if a number of those Senate races are going against the Republicans, it will become clear that it's a wave of election. I mean, that's one scenario that you can look at that is not good for Trump. The other thing is, it just more and more I'm thinking about, and I'm hearing about Florida, because Florida is going to be decided early on election night. I don't know whether they count their mail-in, whatever it is, but it seems like Florida is going to be able to be called by midnight our time. And if Trump loses Florida, correct me if I'm wrong, there's no calculus in the Electoral College for him to prevail.
I think that's correct. I think if Trump loses Florida, if Biden can carry Florida, I think it's 29 electoral votes. It's a hefty number among the states that aren't California. I think it's a lot of electoral votes, and I don't know where else Trump could pick up the margin. Tim Russert, the late Tim Russert, used to have a saying, Florida, Florida, Florida. And he always used to argue that Florida was the sort of the linchpin of presidential elections. Other people argue it's Ohio, our home state. And certainly, if a Republican doesn't win Ohio, he can't win the presidency.
That's right. Well, speaking of Ohio, as you point out, like most great journalists, you and I come from Ohio. We're Buckeyes. I thought Trump's best moment, actually, from the Ohio perspective, is when he said, "I brought back football." That's the Big Ten. The Big Ten, which is in the Midwest, all of those battleground states, is preparing to play football. So, but that's the thing. It's like the real circumstance is more than 200,000 people are dead from pandemic. People are struggling with whether their kids can go to school, their business can open. There's a Harvard NPR poll out today that 60% of families with kids, are worried about how they're going to pay their next month's bills. There's this reality out there. And then in Trump world, it's like it's all about this cultural war. It's like the whole world is these Fox News chyrons or something, And a lot of time that's what comes out of his mouth. He's like ranting at one point to Biden, "You're the one who wanted the Logan Act about General Flynn." I'm sure. What?
Well, let's face it. We know, and he knows, Donald Trump doesn't really have any politics, does he? He doesn't really have an ideology. He's basically got a set of things that he says that he intends to support him both psychologically and electorally. But he doesn't really have any politics. He doesn't have a sense of what's right and wrong politically, in terms of policy. Why did he pull out of the Paris Climate Accord?
Because
What's the logic of that? It makes, except that it was something that Obama had negotiated.
Yeah.
There is no.
And in talking about, I mean, he didn't answer the climate question, but in talking about it, he referenced the California wildfires.
Right.
Every year they call me up and said, California, if he
said those forests, they're full of trees. Those forests are full of trees and they're full of leaves.
And they're 65% owned by the federal government.
65, it's like 80%. It's like a very, very small percentage of it is actually managed.
But notice he also enlisted Gavin Newsom. I have a very good relationship with the government.
Oh, yeah.
And Gavin's not going to stand up and go, no, that's not true, because he can't.
No. Gavin is smart enough to play to Trump's ego to make sure that we in California get some federal resources where we need them.
Let's talk about our colleagues in the media for a second. Two things.
Okay.
One is, I see, the Post, the Times, the LA Times, everybody, put the disruption of the debate onto Trump. But there's this strain of our favorite thing, false equivalence, I think, going through it, where, he told the president of the United States to shut up, man. Or, he called him a clown.
Right.
Or something like that.
Name calling.
Do you think Biden sort of got sucked into it by saying those things, or do you think?
I think that's really bad false equivalency. And the New York Times was guilty of it. Some other people, just sort of the attempt to try to be fair and balanced. Sometimes they go so far overboard that they create a false equivalent. Chris Wallace understood that Biden was interrupting far less than Trump was interrupting. And that's why he went at Trump and said, "Sir, will you please follow the rules?
Stand down, stand back, stand down." Well, that was my second question, is about Chris Wallace, because there's a lot of criticism out there today from both sides, that he let the thing get out of control. And the first tweet from the Trump war room was, well, Wallace interrupted Biden 15 times, but he interrupted President Trump 76 times, which is, yes, that is true. And
your point is what?
Is there anything that Wallace could have done? You and I both moderated debates on a smaller scale, but on that stage with those rules,
it's pretty tough. I don't know, unless he had a kill switch that could kill the microphone. And even then, to do that, I think would have violated the rules that both sides had agreed to. But it seems to me, going forward, if there's going to be debates, you have to have a kill switch, because otherwise you cannot control Donald Trump. He's demonstrated that for him, the goal is not to have a debate. The goal is to have a debacle. That's his intention. And the only way that the Commission on Presidential Debates can take command is if they have some ability to control the interruptions. At least that's what I think.
Well, and the next one is supposed to be this town hall format, of course, which is very different, which is going to be moderated by Steve Scully of C-SPAN. And you and I know Steve Scully.
Yeah.
Very, very smart, nice guy.
Oh, he's so nice. He's so nice.
He's going to be, it's going to be ugly. So, yeah, I think,
I think you and Yoakum and I were on with him one night at 2 o'clock in the morning in New Orleans or someplace.
Yeah. All right. So my favorite comment of the whole night, and just just to wrap up, came from David Plouffe, the former Obama advisor, who said that, Trump acted as if he was thinking, Putin doesn't have to do these debates. Why do I?
That was a great comment.
Yeah,
I
think he's right on there. I think it's like he's trying to throw the whole apparatus of government off the table and say, this is mine. This all belongs to me.
Which, by the way, reminds me of one of Biden's best asides was when he referred to Trump as Putin's puppy.
Yeah.
Which I think you and I would prefer lapdog, but puppy's not bad.
Yeah. All right. Well,
no, I agree with you. I think that was Trump's goal, and in that regard, he was successful. He trashed the entire. Rachel Maddow said he's not running against Biden. He's running against democracy, running against the election, and I think that's correct.
Yeah, Rachel Maddow also said that she couldn't imagine anything Trump would have done more except bite the head off a bat, which I thought was that was a pretty good line too.
It would have been fun. It would have been fun to have been on live TV after that thing because there were just so many opportunities.
Yeah, Dana Bash, said on CNN it was a
she
shit.
called it a shit show. Yeah, which I think, on live TV, which was pretty good for CNN.
It's cable, so I can say it, but but it's just all these people with conventional, whether it's reporters or the your opponent or the debate moderator or whoever, it's just he just trashes it all. And, and it's nobody's figured out how to deal with it except the election. And my bottom line is this is not going to end well.
Well, if it's a landslide for Biden, then I think Trump will get out of the way. If it's not a landslide, then I think it goes to the Supreme Court and it may not end well.
Or the House. Oh, God. All right, brother. I'll talk to you next time.
All right, partner. Take care.
Like the new glasses.
Oh, thanks.
Good luck. Yeah, you look about 10 years younger.
Yeah, all right. That's good. That's
the
whole goal.
586.
That's the entire goal.
All right, I'll talk to you.